Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about how to stop worrying about your relationship. I'm going to share 2 ways to calm yourself and really feel that everything is going to be all right. My guest, Holly, was suffering from betrayal trauma. She and her husband were having the same stressful conversation every weekend, even though she had read every relationship book on the planet. Every weekend was still ruined, and after 30 years of marriage, he continued to break her heart with his addictive behavior. Now her weekends are light and breezy, even playful. She's going to tell us how she did that. And then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which sounds validating. And that's always a fun feeling. But this advice only leads to squandering your power and influence in the relationship. All that is coming up. But first, let's talk about how to stop worrying about your relationship. When you're not getting what you need in your relationship, you want to know, are things ever going to get better? Or is this relationship just a huge mistake? Is your partner ever going to change? Or is this problem, this pain that you're feeling now, going to be with you for the rest of your life? You just want to know what's going to happen so you can make the right decisions. But since you can't control what he does, it's hard to know what the future holds. The whole thing can make you apprehensive. I remember feeling that way almost every day for years. My marriage still isn't perfect, but I don't feel anxious about it anymore. Here's what I did to feel calm and relaxed about my relationship. Number 1 is I learned to stay in the moment. And you may think this is easier said than done, but I'm going to share exactly how I did it. And I confess that in my anxiety, I wasn't a pleasant person. Whenever I felt anxious, I would shriek at my husband and I would demand to know how he could let this happen and when he was ever going to take action. And then no matter what he said in response, I just rolled my eyes in disgust. Not very dignified, I know. But asking myself one powerful question has helped me avoid falling into a giant pit of needless emotional turmoil more times than I can count. When I feel so apprehensive, I'm shaking. The question I ask myself is, am I okay right now in this moment? At first, the answer was yes, but followed by a list of all the terrible things that could happen in the future, especially if I continue to focus on them. But if I just stick to the facts for the moment, so far, the answer to that question has been yes, every single time. For example, one of the things that used to make me incredibly fretful was when my husband and I were down to our last $19.83 in the bank, and then a $20 debit would come through, which meant we were overdrawn. And now we had an overdraft fee too. Ah! Don't you hate when that happens? Me too. I felt a panic rising inside of me as I anticipated running out of food or gas or eye cream and having no way to buy more, ever. But when I started asking myself, am I okay right now? My honest answer was always, yeah, I am. I wasn't hungry or stranded on the way to work or in danger of getting premature wrinkles. I wasn't suffering in any way except anticipation of the future, which I imagined would be very, very bad. But I was usually wrong about that. The more evidence I gathered about how the things I was so worried about didn't actually happen, the easier it got for me to stay in the moment where I was still breathing and everything was fine. Eventually, I had a long string of moments where I was totally all right. And I found that I could apply this question to anything I was anxious about, from wondering if my marriage would always feel lonely and lack affection, to worrying about my parents' health, to stressing about a talk I was preparing. I learned I could choose calm instead of being a victim of anxiety in my marriage and every other situation too. The second habit I adopted that helped me stop worrying is drop and do 10. And good news, it's not push-ups, but it does take some discipline at first until you get the hang of it. And then, in my experience, it becomes a powerful habit that changes your whole life for the better. Here's what I mean. Even when I learned to stay in the moment, I sometimes found myself getting worked up all over again. That was my well-worn pattern in my brain. And it wasn't a very good one, but I didn't know how to stop for a long time. So I would think, everything's not okay. We're overdrawn. It's his fault for spending too much. And just like that, I was anxious again and asking myself endless, unhelpful questions about whether he would ever change or if I'd be better off without him. I'm embarrassed to say I used to think that way. That seems so strange now because I don't feel that way about him at all anymore. Now it's clear that he's made my life richer in every way for the last 30 years. This habit I'm about to spell out has a lot to do with why I feel that way and why it's my experience now. So here it is. In addition to recognizing that I was totally fine in this moment, when I felt anxious, I also dropped and did 10 gratitudes, that is. I'd focus on those gratitudes on the very things I was most worried about in that moment, which, when we were overdrawn, was that I would have to go without forever. And let's not forget, ever. I mean, who wouldn't be anxious with that line of thinking, right? But then I started finding evidence of the opposite. Okay, so maybe there was no money in the bank account, but I find 10 things that I did have and I was grateful for. I'd start with the basics. I had food in the fridge, clothes to wear, a house to live in, and $46 in my purse. I also had some luxury items like a car, a gym membership, fancy eye cream, and new pajamas. And by the time I got to 10, I was starting to feel pretty well off and plenty calm. Chances are good that you'll be able to stop feeling anxious and take nice, deep breaths when you ask yourself if you're okay in the moment and then drop and do 10 gratitudes too. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest Holly and her husband were having the same stressful conversation every weekend, even though she had read every relationship book on the planet. Every weekend was still ruined, and after 30 years of marriage, he continued to break her heart with his addictive behavior. Now her weekends are light and breezy, even playful. She's going to tell us how she did that. Holly, welcome to the Empowered Wife Podcast. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Laura.
So there was a breakdown in your marriage. Tell us about that.
Okay, so our marriage started out kind of rocky to begin with. I think we were very young and just didn't have a lot of skills like everyone, probably. And we were just going along. I was very I just felt like I didn't even understand marriage. I thought it was going to be easy, to be honest. Like your mom and dad are married. You see people married. I thought it was going to be easy, and it just was really rough and hard. And I had a couple kids pretty quickly and had some health challenges because of that. And things were really hard. We weren't communicating well. And somewhere like around right before our 10th wedding anniversary is kind of where the big major signs that our marriage was really in trouble started to show up. I'd had our 4th child right before our 10th wedding anniversary. And one day my husband came home and told me that he'd like to take me for a drive. And on that drive, we stopped and talked, and he let me know that he had acted out on our marriage, and he had been struggling with addictive behaviors with pornography since he was 15. And I had no idea how to handle that information or how to help him or what it even meant. So that was a super difficult time, right before 10 years. And here I am with 4 kids. I'm homeschooling, we're everything looks pretty normal. I mean, I knew our marriage wasn't great. Like our connection issues were real, but I had no idea that that was going on, that he had been trying to cope with stress and life in this destructive manner, really. And so my heart was completely shattered and broken. And so that's a pretty big sign that you're in trouble. And I did not know what I was going to do. I cried a lot and just tried to process for several months. I remember, if anybody's experiencing this, I remember it just feels like your guts have exploded and you don't know how you're going to put yourself back together. And he would leave for work every day and I would curl up on the bed and cry. I just had no idea what to do. I know it seems crazy. Like, no, we didn't really talk to anyone. I did finally talk to his mom. So my mother-in-law was actually my really close friend. And I let her in and she helped me, but we never even considered counseling, which is so funny. Like, no one said, you should get counseling, you should get help. Like, were just on our own at that point. So we are very active in our church, and my husband did get some help there on his own, and that was good. But mostly I just started reading books and trying to find answers out there, and he was doing the same thing. And so we got through the next 10 years just sort of, I don't know, it was like, just for me, it was like, I'll just pretend that this is never going to happen again. I think that's really, I was just trying to move on. And I didn't have really any understanding that addictions, no matter what they are, like, they don't just go away. He wasn't, and that was kind of how we were dealing with it, was just, well, we would just won't talk about it. He promised he's fixing it. Everything will be fine. Until right before our 20th wedding anniversary, we did things in tens for some reason. Right before our 20th, he came home after, and he was associating with awesome men at this time in business and really learning and growing. And so I give my husband credit because he didn't try to hide this time. I mean, the first many years of our marriage, he was hiding, but he came home one night and said, okay, I've got to change my life. I've got to figure this out. And I want you to know that none of the behavior had stopped through that 10 years. So it had been another 10 years of addictive behavior. And he had acted out again. And strangely, that time, it broke my heart, but not in the same way as it had the first time. The first time, I felt like I had died. Like, it just felt like I would never love again. I would never feel again. It was just crushing. And the second time is when I think, I was 10 years older too, so that's good. And I think I just was so like mind blown. And like, how could this be happening when we look good? We're raising this family. By then I had 6 children. It just was incredulous. And I started to realize how huge this issue really was, that this was an addiction issue and we needed help. So we addressed it completely different at that time, by getting help and support and reading a lot of more books. But this time there was transparency. I guess that's the biggest thing. Vulnerability changed. My husband was very open. That time he allowed me to ask him any question I wanted without fighting me or making me feel embarrassed that I had questions. So it really did change some of that. But what I couldn't fix, I had no idea, Laura, how to fix the connection, the intimacy. I didn't feel like I even had a heart anymore. Like I used to say, I'm one of the walking dead. I didn't know how else to say it. Like I loved him as a person. I loved my family. I was totally committed. I don't like divorce, didn't want divorce. And that's my belief system and my story. But I knew, there was more to him. But I wanted over as that ended and we started to go through the next 10 years, I just was so discouraged. I didn't know how I was ever going to really love him again. And I was sad. I was heartbroken that I couldn't love again and that there was the possibility that I might spend my whole life feeling that lack of emotion. And that was very hurtful.
Wow. And you were trying to get help, you mentioned. What kinds of things did you do?
We did reach out to a couple different addiction counselors, and they were okay. Like we'd go for a couple appointments and then it was just disappointing. I just, every marriage, like you always say, your marriage is your journey. It's your story. And there was no way to get them to understand our commitment, our desires, like what we wanted. And so I was I had an intuitive feeling that I didn't want anyone interfering in my marriage that wouldn't understand. And that included family. Like no family knew about our real situation they still don't actually, most of them. So we kept it very private so that we could make our own choice and try to figure out our marriage together.
Were you afraid that the word was going to come back, like you have to get divorced?
Yes, I was very sure. Even my closest siblings would say that. Yeah, I was pretty confident that's what they would say. And I just couldn't deal with that because it was already so hard for me to do what I was doing. And I wanted encouragement and I didn't know where to get that. So I basically just kept it at home and read lots of books.
And you tried to get encouragement from your church leader, I think, too.
Yes. Yeah. And there was, they were like supportive of this was our decision and our journey. And they were supportive, especially of my husband, really helpful to him. But there wasn't a lot of support for wives. And I still think that's an issue out there, like for women that, we need the support too, even though we're not the one with the addiction. Sometimes it's hard to get that kind of support.
Yeah, you were looking for some kind of role model of another couple. What happened with
for
that?
Sure. I remember, so I did remember asking that question of a church leader that I was with. And I said, please just tell me, one other story, one, couple that's survived what I'm trying to do here. And he was like, I don't even know where I'll find this story for you. And I feel like that's because there's still so much stigma around sexual addiction that it's hard to find the answers. And it's getting better. I'm finding resources online that are really good, but it's hard.
Yeah. So you were feeling pretty hopeless, it sounds like.
Very.
And here you'd read every book. You'd already read every book.
Yeah. Gosh, I was doing some good things. I was doing pieces and parts. I was trying to be respectful. I was doing the love languages, all the popular ideas out there. I was reading the books. I was trying to do them, but I just couldn't fix me. And I do want to add, through the last 12 years, my husband kept his word and he is continuing the recovery, obviously, but he doubled our income. He just serves me like a crazy person. He has changed. He's softened. He's kinder. He's present. So he's done his work. And I was the one that was stuck for the last few years.
And so you were having these conversations every weekend. What were those like?
Yeah. I call them the crazy cycles. That's from a book, I'm sure. I wanted a connection with him so badly. I wanted to be in love, and I didn't know how to own it. I wanted him to fix it, like fix my heart. You did this, fix fix how I feel, be super romantic, be super emotional, share your feelings, all the stupid things I was trying to push him and shove him basically to be what I needed, to hoping that maybe this switch would flip on eventually, and I would feel better, that he was going to make me feel better. But I was manipulating him in the ways that I wanted him to love me. And that doesn't go over very well.
No. And so how would these conversations end?
Oh gosh, we're really good. So one of the good things about when my husband and I fight is that we both clean.
Your house would just get spotless?
My gosh, we have the cleanest house. Yeah. So our house would be spotless. The lawn would be mowed. It was beautiful. But then we would do the not talking for 2 or 3 days to recover. And I can clearly see I was manipulating, pushing him, trying to get my needs met in a way that was just destructive.
So what happened?
Well, this is the great part of the story. I mean, I won't say that there was no growth over all those years, because again, we're both so committed, just completely clueless. Like, how do you overcome something so hard? And it was last summer, so last August, I had 2 kids getting married. They were both engaged last summer. And so there was all kinds of lovey-dovey romance in my life. My kids, kissing everywhere and all this stuff. And I was just like, getting really sensitive to the lack that I had. It was just kind of this big mirror of like, ouch, this is so hard for me to watch. I'm so happy for them, but this is extremely painful. And so I was kind of ready for my next batch of books, because that's what I would do every few months. And I remember I downloaded 3 books off Amazon on my Kindle app, and I bought 2 paperbacks. They all came, and I read all of them before I read yours. It's really funny. I read 4 books and I'm a big reader, so I read them all really fast. Like within a couple weeks, I'd read 4 books and was like, it's just repetitive. It's the stuff I've already known, and it's not working. And I opened up your book and I started to read, and within literally the first chapter, I was crying, and I just knew, Laura, I knew. This is what I've prayed for. You put it together in a system. I've actually said that many times. I've said to one of my sisters I'm really close to, and I've said, why can't someone make this, a formula? Why can't someone put all this information in one place so that it's understandable, so that I can work, the steps? I want to do that. And I immediately was like, 6 steps? I can do 6 steps. There 6 skills. I got this. How hard can this be? So anyway, I immediately connected within pages that I had found something really important for me.
So what did you start doing differently than what you had been doing?
Well, every page showed me, some of I wasn't ever trying to be unkind to my husband. It was just, I was trying to survive and do something that I didn't know how to do. And I immediately recognized the lack of self-care in my life. I love serving my family. I'm a busy, high energy person. So that was always fun, but I had never really chosen my own happiness. And that really convicted me, actually, because through the years of blaming my husband for I mean, I didn't really cover that, but I was very resentful and didn't even know. Like there was deep, deep resentment and feeling like if this hadn't been your issue, or if you had told me this before we got married, I wouldn't have married someone that was so messed up or someone that was bad or whatever. Like there was a lot of resentment to that of the secrecy. And I think that betrayal trauma is very hard because of the secrets. And so immediately when you started talking in the book about making yourself happy, I was like, oh, that that was a major thing for me, is to really own that. And I had kind of skirted around it for many years. So go ahead.
What did you do? How did you start making yourself happy?
So I did the assignments in the book and wrote out the ideas, 20 ideas, which was actually kind of a stretch. They were a little boring at first because I'm like, I don't even know. But I started my list and started working on it and got really committed. That is one thing about me. Like if I believe, I believe. I'm all in.
You are committed. You are committed. There's no question.
Yeah. So I started a notebook, which I highly recommend, and and this was without telling my husband. I did not tell him I had found your book or anything, because I really wanted to know for myself privately that this was what I thought it was. And so I started writing every night 3 things that I would do the next day to take care of myself and choose happiness. And that started to just make me feel better, like making myself a higher priority and all the skills. But that was the first thing that really started to shift my happiness. And it was noticed very quickly by my husband. Yeah, he's like, oh, you're happy today. Yes. So
like,
it was
surprise.
good.
Yeah. So, and then you started to feel better, of course, because you're feeling happier also. And then he was responding to this. Well, how did you know? So he was commenting, oh, you seem happier. Was there anything else that you noticed about his response to you?
He was kind of nervous, I think, for a while, because I had tried happiness a couple other times with different books, and he didn't know that this was something different. I was very convicted by all the things that I learned in the book. I had been more controlling than I had even imagined I was. Just manipulating, not trying to be manipulative, but trying to get him to fix our lives, wanting my needs met without thinking of his needs, really, even. I know that I had disrespected him by bringing up the past a lot and just not knowing how to go forward. We were really just stuck. I was stuck in this pattern of the past choking me. Literally, probably every day I was having moments of, I don't know how to go forward.
So now you've started making yourself happy, and it sounds like you maybe stopped bringing up the past also.
Yeah, so the whole duct tape idea, that was hilarious. So I read through that and was like, oh, wow. And I actually felt so much grief, Laura. Like I felt the pain of what I had done and how long I had punished him. And I think I went a couple days where I couldn't talk. I was so afraid that anything I said would be wrong that I just kind of went silent until I could figure out what this even meant. And I remember for a few weeks, it felt like learning to ride a bike again. It was so strange. It was, it was just, I was so awkward. I'm like, how do I say what I feel? Can I say what I feel? Like, I just went through this really deep searching process of accountability to my part in how hard we had struggled.
Which it sounds like was pretty painful, but you were pretty unflinching about it, it sounds like. Where did you get all that unflinching commitment? How did you do that?
Oh man, I just think we had so many years of marriage invested And I knew that everything I had done had been wrong, obviously, or I wouldn't have been where I was. And I just wanted with all my heart to just believe in something new. I wanted to do something new. And that really drove me. And the other thing is that I had these weddings. I'm about to be an empty nester. My baby is a teenager. And I just realized I want these years of us being together to be good. I don't want it to just be us, because we'd hidden our issues had been very camouflaged by raising 6 kids. There was plenty of things to keep us busy. And here suddenly I knew that right around the corner were the years where that would be over. And I just was like, okay. And I read many of the stories and that women, the testimonials, and I was like, okay, if it works for someone, surely it can work for me too. And so I just threw myself into it.
You wanted a great marriage. So,
Yes.
and was there a moment when you started to realize, like, okay, this really is working. This really is different this time?
Yes. Just small things started to happen. I had craved emotional connections so badly all these years, because one of the side effects for my husband from hiding and being, not embarrassed, not wanting people to know who he was all those years, was that he didn't know how to be vulnerable or to talk to me. And so I had always just kind of, forced him sometimes, but that wasn't good. I mean, that's not the kind of connection I wanted. So slowly he started just doing sweet things. He now comes in every morning. He wakes me up now with cuddles and calls me a princess, and he holds me, and that's how I start my day every day. He doesn't miss a day if he's in town. He started.
That wasn't happening before.
No.
Okay. All right.
No. He's just cute. He's always done service, but it's changed. It's not just doing busy work to stay busy. It's really sweet. He'll do things that he knows I don't really want to do, or he's always in the kitchen doing the hand dishes as fast as I'm cooking so that the kitchen's clean. And he knows that I like to wake up in the morning to a clean kitchen, so he never lets the kitchen be dirty before he goes to bed. And just fun things, but the emotional part is the biggest part for me. He now often comes and expresses his own feelings or his thoughts about what he's up to. And that never happened for years and years. I just felt completely alone and broken. I thought it was like being, sleeping with this person and never really knowing them.
Wow. So this is a big dramatic change from how you were living before, that you're having this. So it sounds like he feels emotionally safe with you now.
Yeah, there's a lot of safety that we didn't have. And the thing, Laura, that I'm so passionate about with your book and all the teachings is that what really changed was really not my husband. I mean, he did his own changing. I give him all the credit for his own changing, how he transformed. But what I've been gifted this last 10 months now already, almost a year, is I transformed. I believe in me again. I like me again. I'm excited about my future. I'm an artist. I went through, this is emotional, I went through years of not painting because I couldn't. There was nothing inside me that I could into to create beautiful pieces of artwork. It was gone. And I'm now painting pretty regularly. I finished actually 2 paintings last week. I'm taking, commissions again, and I'm enjoying it. And I'm sleeping again. I didn't sleep for the past 12 years. I had insomnia from the betrayal trauma. And it was really difficult to go years and years. I tried everything, but I just could not sleep. And I always felt like it was an emotional reason. And the medications and all the things I tried just wouldn't tap into it and fix it. And in the last 3 or 4 months, I've started sleeping through the night, and I consider that a complete miracle. So is my marriage like perfect? No, but there's beautiful things happening that mean a lot to me. I am changed because I'm back in control of my emotions and just my actions. It's great.
Wow. So what would you say to a woman who is maybe in those heartbreaking shoes you were describing, like at the 10th anniversary, where she's just finding out about this and she's having betrayal trauma? What would you say she should do?
If she's listening to your podcast, I'm going to say you're in a beautiful place. Like, I put in years of searching and working. And I really feel like, things come to you when you're ready. And I trust that. I'm okay with the process. But these skills are so important, and you need to take care of yourself. If you're in that place, you've got to take care of yourself. I also, for me, I didn't want a counselor, but I needed a friend. You need support. You can't just do this by yourself. And I was blessed with a sister who stood by me until I found the awesome ladies of Laura Doyle's program. And now I have tons of support. But get support. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. And now you have trained to become a coach, Holly. So how has that impacted your relationship?
Well, that was a very unexpected decision, actually. I think I'd only been, I've read the book cover to cover, and then I somehow looked at your resources online, I think, and got into the Ridiculous Happy Wife program, because I was like, I'll stick my toe in. I've never talked to anyone. So I stuck my toe in and started the group sessions and stuff. And it was so powerful that I knew, I just knew I had to jump all the way in and get this huge support in making this transformation. I mean, I was very aware that my transformation was going to be a lot of work for me to do. And I knew I'd need the support and help to stick with it. So jumped into coach training and met amazing people.
And why does that mean so much to you? Because you're sharing some really personal stuff with us, very intimate things that you never talked to anyone, your family members. No, you're sharing with us really courageously. Why? Why would you do that?
Well, that was probably the biggest need that I had when I came to the coach training. And I've shared with you before that, I mean, I literally would shake on the coaching training calls. Is I was so scared. Like, I literally never exposed myself. I'd never been vulnerable. No one knew. And mostly that was to protect my children. I would have done anything to protect them and keep our family together and keep the respect they had for their father. As I became to understand better what he had also suffered and experienced, my compassion for him grew. And so I was very protective of my story, but I needed the support. I needed to know that I wasn't crazy, that it wasn't the worst story in the world. I just needed to hear, good job. I just needed to hear from other women that I wasn't crazy and that that I was doing good things.
And even your husband was supportive of you doing this interview today.
Yes, I feel like that's kind of unusual. So at first I didn't tell him anything, but when I decided to be a part of the coach training, that's when I told him what I had found and what I was doing, and that I would love to invest in myself and in us, and explained what that meant. And he's been rock solid 100% since that moment. Yeah.
Wow. But even having you share some of the things that you shared with us today, somebody else might have said, that's private. I don't want you talking about that, but he was open to it. Why do you
Yeah.
think so?
Both of us would love to be that story for another couple that was like us, that was like, we don't know what to do. We don't even know if we should try. We didn't know what to do. We were scared. We both wanted our relationship. We wanted our family, but there was, I knew there would be pressure to end our relationship. And I had known him. I've known my husband since I was 18. And, I remember, I just want to share that I have a memory of somewhere between the two disclosures. I remember saying to a sister, I think I married badly. I didn't marry a good person. And being so crushed by that, like, how did I do that? And I can honestly say that's completely changed.
Wow. So how do you see him now?
Well, we're just on this beautiful healing part of our journey, but I see him as a great guy. He's had his own, fight, his own struggles, but out of them, he's become my best friend again. We're completely safe. I never thought I'd feel this safe. And while I'm not going to stop here, Laura. Like, I'm excited. I see love coming. I see that part coming back. And I have a ton of hope that I didn't have before.
And you want even more.
I want all of it.
I want it all. Yeah.
The moon, the stars, like, yeah. I want
the lovey-dovey, right?
Yeah.
So won't stop until your kids say, Mom, Dad, why are you always so lovey-dovey? Okay.
No, they already say that, which is great. I've even had friends say, my gosh, you and your husband have the best marriage. How do you do it? I just always smile.
I love it. What would you say if you could just go back in time now and talk to Holly then and tell her what you know now? What do you think you'd say?
Oh man, because that's hard. If I had known way back then how hard it was going to be, I don't know. It's
right.
good that you don't know how hard it's going to be. But I would definitely tell myself to choose faith and to envision what I wanted. That's been a huge skill for me. Is I just too easily got caught up in fear and the resentment. And resentment and fear just choke you. They suffocate hope. They suffocate love. And I really think that was the biggest struggle, that my everyday focus, I wasn't noticing that my husband, kept the trash out and did the dishes and got up in the middle of the night with babies. Like, I wasn't focused on that. I was just really focused on the brokenness.
Yeah. But no more, it sounds like.
No more. I'm not perfect, of course, but I just feel like a different person, and I'm super grateful for that.
Well, and it sounds like your relationship is pretty completely transformed from what it's been for like 20 years.
Oh yeah. The terrible weekend pattern is broken. That actually broke, within a few months of the coach training, that kind of ended, because I could see through it. I could see why I was creating it. And I just stopped creating the pattern. And there's not really anything to fight about now. It's great.
So would you say how often do you fight now?
they're not even like they were. I mean, so I can share this little personal Sunday. I don't even know what happened. Was it? I can't even remember anymore. Last Sunday, not this Sunday, so Mother's Day. Something happened anyway, and literally within 15 minutes, my husband came back and said, "I love you too much for this. We just immediately forgave, moved on, and had a beautiful day. Like, we just don't let it happen anymore. We just don't want to. We don't want to waste the energy anymore going to that place."
So it sounds like you have momentum towards the intimacy, towards the connection and the emotional safety.
Yeah.
That you both just want to keep it there.
Yeah.
And then in the past, it would have been a couple of days of Cold War, it sounds like.
Yeah. I just was really just absorbed in my pity parties and the resentment. I mean, I had a lot of things I could be resentful about, so I felt very justified. It just wasn't getting me what I wanted. And that's what I finally realized, is that I had to make a choice. I wasn't going to be able to live on both sides of this fence, punishing him, resenting him, and being in love with him and having intimate connection. You can't stand on both sides. And that's what living the skills empowered me to do, was to finally jump to the correct side of the fence and start living there. It's way better.
Wow. Well, your story is incredibly inspiring. And I just admire so much how much courage and commitment this took for you to get this far, and persistence. You never gave up. You kept reading those books. You kept searching and seeking. And you are now just a beacon of hope for another woman who is feeling very alone and hopeless and wants to know if there's a happy ending possible for her. Yeah. And you're here to say there is.
There is.
Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story, Holly.
Thank you, Laura.
If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week Award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
The advice that's got me irate this week was suggested by an expert at a publication to someone who wrote and asked about how to resolve a parenting conflict with her husband. And this woman was really frustrated, and she said they hadn't been able to find resolution themselves. Now, before I tell you what the expert said, I just want to make it really clear that I am not making this up. Someone actually wrote this in response to this woman's challenge. You ready? This is what the expert said. Your husband has got to make the time to discuss with you how you're going to negotiate your son's troubles with bedtime. It's all the more imperative that he do so in a way that respects the division of labor you've agreed upon. In other words, the answer, according to this expert, is that she should make her husband talk about it. Maybe she could even show him this expert's response and say, see, you have to talk about this with me, and you have to respect what we already agreed on. And you're not doing that. And then I assume that her husband will look into her eyes lovingly and say, you are so right, darling. How could I have ever seen things another way? I will immediately start to do it your way, which I now see was always the best way. And then he'll smile and rub noses with her. And they'll never fight about it again. As you already know, that will never happen from making someone discuss things and then bringing in an authority to prove they are wrong and you are right. That's not how things work. At least not at my house. And from what I hear, it doesn't happen at the homes of thousands of my students either. The more likely response is a defensive husband who doesn't want to talk at all, or maybe has some choice words for her to shore up his own ego after she tells him how wrong he is. That's no way to resolve a conflict and create intimacy, passion, and peace. But what about solving the parenting problem? How is she going to stop suffering? That's the big question, right? If she doesn't sit on her husband and make him talk about the problem until he agrees with her, how is this going to get resolved? Well, in my experience, it's incredibly important and sometimes a little bit challenging to figure out what it is I want and then express that as a desire. And if it's something that's eluded me, like this woman is describing, I like to bring my challenge to my husband and ask him to help me solve it. I like to say, hey, can I borrow your brain? I would love to sleep through the night. And lately that's not happening with our son waking up crying several times a night. I know I'd be so much happier if I could get more sleep. Do you have any ideas? I'm often amazed at what my husband comes up with when I tap into his brain to solve my problems. And here I think I'm so smart and I can figure everything out. And then he says something I never thought of, and it's so simple and it's brilliant. Or he steps up to be my hero and offers to unburden me with something that's feeling heavy. But that has never happened from me saying, you have to discuss this with me. Not once. And for that reason, the advice that you should say, you have to discuss this with me and you have to respect the agreements we already have, is the very worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll share how to be loved just the way you are. I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that someone asked me recently to think about which household chore I secretly enjoy. I am still thinking about that one.